Hi there, I'm Anna. My life has been quite the roller coaster ride, to say the least. Picture ripping off a band aid, quick, painful, and mostly forgettable. But if you've got a moment, let me share a saga that'll make you appreciate your own family drama. Let's begin with our family portrait a quaint little house with a white picket fence, backyard barbecues, and a mutt named Buster who's seen better days. That's where the Norman Rockwell scene ends. Inside that picture-perfect facade was my older sister, Rachel, the queen bee. Then there's me just buzzing around, barely noticed. Rachel had the charm down pat, blonde, dazzling smile, and a way with words that could charm the socks off anyone. She snagged everything, the shiny bike, the last slice of pizza, even the fuzzy sweater I had my eye on for Christmas. And when she turned on the charm, Mom and Dad were putty in her hands. As for me, well, I got the leftovers and hand-me-downs. Life wasn't exactly handing me silver spoons. Dad worked a tough job, coming home with grease under his nails and a weary smile. Mom was a whiz in the kitchen but could sniff out BS, except when it came from Rachel. When Rachel got into that fancy college, it was like a dream come true for Mom and Dad. But when it came time for me to think about my future, suddenly money was tight and sacrifices had to be made. They broke the news at the kitchen table one evening, Dad scratching the back of his neck nervously. "We've been crunching the numbers, Anna," he said. "College just isn't feasible right now. You've got to be realistic." So there I was, not even 18, faced with the harsh reality that my dreams were too expensive. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. My plan was simple: work hard, save every penny, and someday make it into that courtroom with Esquire at the end of my name. The jobs I landed weren't glamorous. By day, I served coffee and dodged pastry crumbs. By night, I scrubbed dishes at a rundown diner. But Emily, a freelance designer, and Trish, a bassist in a band, saw something in me. Their encouragement kept me going. Everything seemed on track until one day, it all came crashing down. I woke up with what I thought was the flu, only to find out it was much worse. Long story short, I ended up in the hospital with a mountain of medical bills I couldn't comprehend. My college fund vanished in a sea of numbers and decimal points, leaving me wondering how I'd ever make it out of this mess. I attempted to plead my case, hoping for a payment plan or some sort of solution. "Look, I've got nothing." I told her, every fiber of my being wanting to retreat and surrender. "It's not personal, Han. It's just the system," she replied. But to me, it felt deeply personal. Back at our apartment, the atmosphere mirrored the staleness of the pizza we had left out overnight. "There go the textbooks," I muttered, flipping through pages of legal jargon I still hadn't fully grasped. We sat there, three dreams deferred, enveloped in the harsh reality of our cramped living space. "What next?" Trish finally asked after a silence that lingered a bit too long. I didn't have an answer, just a whirlwind of questions swirling in my mind. "Start over," I eventually said. "What else can I do? I'm not cut out for giving up." It sounded resolute, but even I could hear the uncertainty in my voice. Both of them nodded in understanding, but the worry lines etched deep into the moment were unmistakable. "Yeah, I understand," I whispered into the phone, bitterness coating each word. Mom didn't see me swallow the lump in my throat or notice the tremble in my hand. "You're tough, Anna. You'll figure it out," Dad offered before passing the phone back to Mom. The bus stop bench felt unforgiving against my back as I pondered my next move while hurried passersby bustled past. Rachel, with her perfect life, didn't bother answering the phone, probably didn't want to catch my bad luck through the receiver. "Family, right?" The guy waiting next to me snorted, catching the tail end of my phone call. He wore a jacket weathered by time and a 5 o'clock shadow at 8. "Yeah, family," I echoed, not really in the mood for conversation, but finding a strange solace in talking to a stranger. "Don't let it beat you. You look like you've got fight in you," he said, crinkling the paper bag in his hand. I managed a half smile. "Got any tips for sleeping on one of these seats?" I joked, but the humor fell flat. He looked over, squinting as if evaluating the bench. "This one runs all night. Ride it to the end. Safer than a bench, he advised, his words lingering in the air as my phone buzzed with a low battery warning. Great, another thing to add to today's list of challenges. The bus hissed to a stop, its doors inviting us to escape to wherever it might take us. The guy boarded, finding a seat among the weary faces of nighttime commuters. I lingered at the bus stop, clutching the fare tightly in my fist, not yet ready to resign myself to aimlessly riding around in circles. Instead, I gripped my suitcase and began walking, the wheels creating a lonely beat on the sidewalk. Overhead, the streetlights flickered, casting stuttering shadows. In the wavering light, I silently vowed, this isn't how my story ends. Holding on to that determination, I pressed on through the night. Each step was a defiance, a promise that I would claw my way out of this hole. Come on over, kid. Aunt Marlene's raspy voice broke through the other end of the phone, pulling me out of the quicksand. I never thought I'd be so relieved to hear her gravelly tone. When I arrived at her place, she wasted no time on pleasantries or useless small talk. You look like hell, she greeted me, her hand firm on my back as she ushered me in. For the first few days, I stayed in her guest room, attempting to piece myself back together. She didn't push me for details. She wasn't the type for cozy heart-to-hearts, but I could sense she was waiting for me to open up. Finally, as we sat at her cluttered kitchen table surrounded by resilient plants, Aunt Marlene set down her mug and fixed me with her piercing gaze. What do you want, Anna? Really want? Her question made me nervous, as if I were on one of those makeover shows about to reveal my deepest desire. But I was too exhausted to beat around the bush. I want to be a lawyer, I confessed, my voice tinged with desperation. She nodded, as if she had already known. If that's the case, she began, tapping her fingers on the table, the sound mixing with the ticking of the wall clock. I'll pay for your education. My heart skipped a beat with a surge of hope. Are you serious? I asked incredulously. But she raised her finger, slicing through the air with her condition. You keep your grades up, no slacking, she stated firmly. Yet there was a spark in her eyes that told me she believed in me. Really? A grin broke through my exhaustion. I didn't scrimp and save just to blow my money on bingo and whiskey, she retorted with a hint of humor. I rose from my seat and embraced Aunt Marlene tightly, the words thank you getting squeezed between us. None of that mushy stuff, she grumbled, though she patted my back before ushering me away. And you're going to work for me part-time. I need more help around here than I care to admit. What kind of work? I asked eagerly, ready to tackle anything. The kind that needs doing, she replied vaguely, dismissing the question with a wave of her hand. We'll start with that jungle you call a hero and move on to yard work tomorrow. I laughed, a hearty sound that I hadn't heard from myself in a while. Deal. Don't think I'm just being nice. Aunt Marlene warned, you slack off, and the deal's off. I won't let that happen, I assured her, the seriousness settling back in. Good, now help me with these damn plants. They've got a better social life than I do. For the rest of the day, I was covered in soil, pruning, and watering, but the dirt never felt so good on my hands. Aunt Marlene made me work for every penny she was offering, but that was okay. College days weren't a walk in the park. Aunt Marlene helped me out big time, but balancing the books and bills felt like juggling knives. If I dropped one, it could cut deep. Mornings would find me blinking open tired eyes after cramming civil procedure, with my alarm buzzing like a bee in a jar. When my stomach grumbled, reminding me I was human, I'd make a run to the nearest food joint on campus. Regular Lily, who manned the counter, would ask with a knowing look, make it a double? Long night ahead. Can't burn out when you're on fire, I'd quip, even though I felt more like kindling than a blaze. Nights blurred into a frenzy of flashcards and frayed nerves. Whenever my phone buzzed, it was either a reminder for an unpaid bill or a message from Aunt Marlene asking how my day went. I always told her it was better than it actually was. Then things changed overnight. Aunt Marlene fell seriously ill, life taking a cruel turn. In that too-quiet hospital room, I squeezed her hand more times than I could count. I found myself at a loss for words. What do you say when the person who's been your rock is crumbling before your eyes? Who's going to yell at me for eating cookies in bed when you're gone? I tried to joke during one of my visits, struggling to keep it light. You better not, she rasped, her voice a whisper. Crumbs everywhere. We never talked about the money. It was like a silent agreement, the elephant in the room wearing a tutu that nobody wanted to acknowledge. After she passed, I sat in that stiff lawyer's office, more nervous than I ever was for any exam. The lawyer, a stiff man with a comb-over and glasses perched on the edge of his nose, said, "She's left you the house, Anna." It was like Aunt Marlene was still looking out for me. She what? I blinked, gears in my head grinding to a halt. He fiddled with papers. A considerable amount for your student debts. The rest, well, it's for you to figure out. Marlene was clear about making your own way. Despite the knot in my throat, I asked, did she say anything else? He adjusted his glasses. That she believed in you, and that she'd haunt you if you gave up. I laughed through the tears. That was Aunt Marlene, all right. Leaving the office that day, I felt both heavier and lighter at the same time. She gave me a legacy, not just in bricks and mortar, but in the belief that I could finish this last lap without her. I was neck deep in prep for the next bar exam when I heard the knock. 3 sharp raps. The kind that tell you this ain't going to be a friendly how do you do. Pushing open the front door of Aunt Marlene's house, there they stood. Mom, Dad, Rachel, and her husband Dave, like some grim reunion. Rachel wasted no time. Anna, look at us all together again in this huge place. Like a twisted sitcom, ain't it? I drawled, leaning against the doorframe. Dad started in that tone, the kind that said, sit down, shut up. We decided. We've been talking. This house should be for Rachel. She's got kids, a family. Incredulity played on my face. No kidding. Sarcasm heavy as an anchor. Wrong house for that chat, then. Mom's lips tightened, a sure sign she was ramping up to a guilt trip. You'll understand when you have your own family. This is just practical. I must have missed the part where practical meant kicking me out of my own home. I shot back, crossing my arms. Rachel chimed in, batting her eyelashes at me before eyeing Dave for support, who just shrugged. This house is wasted on you. We could give it life, laughter, children running around. What? Turn on Marlene's parlor into a romper room? The idea felt like acid on my tongue. There's no need to be rude, Dave, mumbled Rachel, finally finding her words. Right, because showing up to claim my house is peak civility, I snapped. You're being selfish, Anna, Dad grunted, convinced of his own righteousness. My laughter was bitter. Selfish after years of keeping her in your thoughts during birthday cards. Convenient memory you got there, I retorted. They shuffled uneasily. This wasn't how they imagined their gold-digging scheme would go. Rachel broke in predictably. You can be such a... I cut her off. Don't. I want all of you to just leave, I said as they filed out the same door they came in, burdened by their disbelief and entitlement. Dad turned to me. You'll regret this. I stood tall, looking him square in the eye. The only thing I'll regret is not changing the lock sooner. The door shut behind them, and the silence was mine again. This unwelcome throwback was closed. Inheritance or not, I was keeping on Marlene's legacy, not auctioning it off to the highest bidder in my bloodline. I was beat, the kind of tiger that sticks to your bones. Pulling into the driveway after a double shift at the law firm could do that to a person. All I wanted was a hot shower in my bed. As I jammed my key into the lock, it just ground against metal. What the? I muttered, fiddling with the key. That's when the door swung open. Rachel stood there, little Mia on her hip and a cocky tilt to her lips. Change the locks, Anna, surprise, she said. My eyebrows shot up. Like hell. You did this? This is my house, she smirked. Not anymore, she said, bouncing Mia, who seemed blissfully unaware of the adult drama. Anger bubbled up, hot and volatile. Watch me. I shot back, already dialing, her smirk wavering. You're bluffing, I said with the dispatcher on the line. Rachel's confidence slipped another notch. Yes, my sister illegally entered and changed the locks on my house. I explained loudly into the phone. Dad's truck pulled into the driveway just as I hung up. Him and Mom getting out, tag teaming like this was some sort of intervention. Anna, be reasonable. Mom started, her eyes moist as if she were in a soap opera. I'm past reasonable, I said, not bothering to hide the edge in my voice. Dave stepped up to me, a good foot taller, trying to look menacing. Come on, Anna, he said, his voice low. Don't make a scene. I held up my phone with the recording button clearly on. Say that again, Dave. For the camera, I insisted. His face turned the color of sour milk. Sirens cut through the heavy air as a cop car pulled into view. The officer stepped out, all stern looks and business. What seems to be the problem here? One officer asked. Their bravado crumbled like stale bread. Dad's voice lost a few decibels. It's a misunderstanding, officers. Family matter. Stealing my house is a bit more than a family matter, I said, crossing my arms. The officers looked between us, taking in the scene. They were good at this, shifting gears as the situation unfolded. All right, let's start with some ID, and we'll go from there, one of them said, pulling out a notepad. Reluctantly, Rachel handed me out to Mom and dug into her purse. The legal tango had begun. They asked questions, we gave answers. Dad and Mom put on a show, but the deed to the house was in my name, signed and sealed by Aunt Marlene's will. Can you prove you live here, ma'am? The officer asked me. Better. I can prove I own it, I said, reaching for my briefcase in the car. The sight of Aunt Marlene's will felt like the first deep breath I'd taken since stepping out of that damn car. The officers read it, their eyebrows lifting and dipping as they took in the legalese. Seems clear to us, the officer said, folding the papers back into the briefcase. I suggest you hand over a set of keys to Miss here. Otherwise, we will have to proceed with charges for breaking and entering and unlawful eviction. Rachel gave up a set of keys. Mom and Dad hushed up quick, and Dave, well, he looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. The cops escorted them off the property. Mom shot me a look like I kicked her kitten. But the law was the law. No room for sob stories. The door closed behind me with a click, like the final word in an argument. I leaned against the door, the rush of adrenaline making my hands shake. Exhausted, I trudged into the kitchen to make a much-needed cup of coffee. As the kettle boiled, I thought about what my next move should be. The hefty click of the final lock snapping into place felt like the end of a long, bad joke. My house, now a fortress, needed just one more thing to be perfect. Maybe I'll get a big, nasty dog, I muttered to nobody in particular. I wasn't much of a pet person, but the thought of some drooling monster that could scare off any would-be family intrusions brought a smirk to my face. Weeks stripped by, the silence from my family's end louder than any shouting match we'd ever had. No calls, not even a lousy text. Sometimes deep in the night when the work was done and the quiet was too much, I found myself on Rachel's social media page. She had a knack for dramatic photos of the kids, all sad eyes and pouty lips, with captions snipping at my conscience. Little Tim sure wishes he had a yard to play in, and Maya's third birthday without Auntie Anna. I chuckled every time. Did she think I had amnesia? That I'd forget why I stood my ground and take pity? I remember the days when I begged for money to pay for my studies, and all I got were fancy speeches about responsibility and tough love. I could still feel the cold slam of the door when I was broke and covering, and they told me they had no room. The way my own bedrock, my foundation, crumbled to dust beneath me. Nah, my new life was of my making. My dues paid in full, my battles fought with no one in my corner. No amount of puppy-eyed pictures would change the history they wish I forget. I thought about posting a reply once, something snappy and a bit mean, but why bother? I had work to catch up on, a stack of files on my table that didn't give a damn about family feuds. I had clients who depended on me, and that was the reality I chose to engage with. Sometimes, late into the evening, I'd pour myself some bourbon neat and sit in my backyard, the backyard they wanted to take from me, and I'd savor the quiet. I'd think about that guard dog again, a big one with a bark that would make my folks think twice before stepping onto the porch. Maybe a Rottweiler or a Mastiff, something with bite. My phone stayed quiet, a dead limb I'd long since learned to function without. And when I'd finally hit the sack, I'd sleep the sleep of the just or the wicked. I didn't care which. No ghosts of guilt to disturb my rest, no restless wondering about what-ifs. Just the peace of knowing that from the four walls around me to the roof over my head, it was all mine through and through. The last thing I remember every night was the faint idea of getting that dog. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But the choice was mine, and that was good enough for me.